cases on. Kyle will go into details later with the Kona case, I guess. But there are also other projects already coming up that are not yet baseline, but still use the ConUBC to connect to blockchain networks. For example, the EU-related VetBlock initiative or the Daimler spin-off Blocksmove. Both are already using ConUBC. Both of them hopefully will migrate into using the baseline pattern and base ledger as well. And tomorrow there is another presentation from Stefan Rauch from Concircle, who will go into detail on how ConUBC works within SAP, and perhaps we'll also mention some details of these first projects.
Yeah, and it should be even something where you see multiple SAP systems communicating with one another using ConUBC and doing baselining, doing real baselining with SAP-powered business processes.
Yeah, and talking about standards, one goal of the ProvideBright team and also of Unibright, of course, is also to actively contribute to the standard. There are two concepts that we implemented in the first testnet implementations of base ledger in the, for example, in the Lakewood testnet. Two concepts, sync tree and trust mesh, which will also be presented to the public during that hackathon phase here at EthAtlanta. So we will actively work on it and also work on a format where we can actively contribute it to the community, perhaps as a baseline improvement proposal. Just in short, these are two concepts to use base ledger from a client perspective. We noticed that before something is strictly, let's say, baseline compliant at the current version of the standard, and before we exit our layer 2 base ledger into Ethereum, that there are a lot of communications between business participants that are more or less exchange of different versions of an object, or having a negotiation if we are actually allowed to move into the next work step. And to make all this a little bit faster and more feasible in terms of how base ledger works, we came up with these two concepts. One is, let's say, a versioning of documents, which is anchored in base ledger and then rolled up into Ethereum. And sync tree is a way on how to represent a business object, a large business object like SAP objects, for example, and to exchange them between systems. So yeah, it's a way of perhaps limiting knowledge down to a zero knowledge grade, and more to follow on these concepts is also in Stefan Rauch's presentation. And as I mentioned, we plan to publish a baseline improvement proposal as well. Everything that we build here within base ledger is always planned to find its way into the complete ProvideBright stack. It's always planned to find its way into the open source ecosystem. So these should not be closed concepts, but improve the complete way how the baseline pattern can be used within companies.
Yeah, I guess that's the important thing to mention, that it's a working solution. It's the implementation of the core baseline concepts. So it's a solution for using a public blockchain that is employed to anchor proofs of objects that are being exchanged. These are signed by all parties involved, and then you come up with this legally binding trust on the data that's being exchanged. I mean, this is what baseline was all about, and now we have built an implementation that is, let's say, it just works. So it's fast enough. It can handle really large purchase orders and deliveries. We had this running here in the systems, so it's usable. And as Stefan said, we will contribute it to the public for review, and of course for other people to work on it and to extend it. We assume that's a huge step forward for getting baselining done by enterprises and for their purposes.
And especially in the last days, there have been some very vital discussions in the baseline community, also in the public Slack, where especially our friends from SAP contributed a lot of very great ideas and helpful ideas. And I think they will also find value in these kind of concepts. Yeah, the next weeks and months will show some more projects. And again, Stefan Rauch's presentation tomorrow will show also some details.
This was my idea too, to emphasize on Stefan Rauch's presentation, because you will see some practical details as well, because Trust Mesh is, and Synctree, it's about visualization as well. So how can we visualize a workflow that is being synchronized between multiple parties? How can we show approvals and rejections and versioning? That's a multi-dimensional thing, and that's why we came up with this Trust Mesh. And it's beautiful, I think. You can have a look at it. We really like it, and yeah, we assume we will hear more from it.
Yeah, and moving from pure, let's say, commercial customer cases more into the institutional world. I mean, we're based in Germany, and we are also having great connections into the institutional world here in Europe, especially with our Unibright Benelux branch and Jack Wearing and friends. And a current thing that we also published some weeks ago is that we are working on a POC and on a feasibility study for the European Investment Fund. So some infos on the shareholders of EIF. It's the European Union, it's the European Investment Bank, and
public and private banks.
Public-private banks, a wide range of public institutions. And they are also actively looking into possibilities of using blockchains for their processes. And one of these examples would be taking a look into a EU-wide lending platform. We will not go into details because this is still work in progress, and we are working on a feasibility study which also contains a POC, of course, based on the baseline patterns and using Base Ledger. We're doing this together with our Serbian friends from FinSpot, who also showed a tokenization case at last year's baseline demo day. So the study will examine the potential to improve service provisions to EF clients and counterparts, including financial institutions, small and medium-sized enterprises, auditors and external auditors, and analytics that are running on this data. And everything that we can provide with the baseline pattern is, of course, to allow trust and synchronization over these different parties.
Yeah, I mean, namely, it's their core mission. EIF's core mission is to support Europe's small and medium-sized businesses and giving them finance or helping them to access, for example, credits or venture capital. So it's their core process we are looking into. How can we baseline the lending platform? And I mean, that's a huge thing. And thinking, or given the shareholders that we just mentioned, it's also a great door opener to get the whole idea of baselining and base ledger and blockchain in general addressed towards banks here in Europe, but also to official bodies like the European Bank.
Yeah, and it's also a good sign that, I mean, coming back to the storytelling around blockchain, that now we have something to tell, not only like storing data in a public blockchain, but using a blockchain to add additional trust to the process. If you take a look at the different steps of a lending process, like applications, negotiations, the actual accreditation, offers, granted funds, the auditing and reporting, there are so many steps that are happening between different parties. And the good thing about the baseline pattern is that you add value to the process with every single work step that gets baselined. So it's really a win-win for all participants, for auditors, and for the process itself. Yeah, we are very excited, but of course the feasibility study itself is still work in progress, and we are very happy to give, I think, updates in November or December latest about this.
Yeah, I mean, there have been talks about tokenization and how does tokenization work on a large scale as well. I mean, this is something that I guess multiple institutions are looking into. Might be another area where we can work together. So that's that's great, and that's why we selected this use case as our customer use case for today. And Stefan Rauch can showcase Daimler-Benz Locksmith tomorrow, for example. But there are great things that are moving into the space, I guess.
Yeah, and the purpose of our currently promoted testnet is to support these commercial cases like Kona, and to support institutional cases like on the EIF. So, and one finding that we want to learn from the testnet operation is, of course, the right metrics for everything around base ledger and staking. So these are the current numbers that we are coming up with here in September 2021. Of course, these numbers may change because we are still in testnet operation. But the idea coming from a performance point of view is that we will have around or not more than 100 validator nodes.
That seems to be the sweet spot for performance versus security.
Yeah, decentralization and performance. And we are talking about 50,000 UBT up to 1 million UBT, where we most probably will cap the staking power per validator. So this gives you, or should give you a feeling how these validator nodes are distributed and built. And of course, interesting for all the, as UBT itself is very well decentralized already, it's also interesting for all the proxy stakers that perhaps do not hold biggest bags of UBT, that per validator node, we are thinking about allowing up to 100 proxy stakers per validator. And this proxy staking should be possible from lower amounts like 500 UBT already. And it's also very important to have the idea that we have the idea of a revenue share and staking reward competition between the validators. So it's not like a decentralized metrics that are decided on once and that are not about to change, because each validator can talk to potential proxy stakers by offering them better revenue share or staking.
They should not be carved in stone. I mean, that's some other thing that we file under decentralization. I mean, that's just competition. So there's different approaches to this. And decentralization in general is a very important word here, because we will make sure that we move towards a decentralized governance structure controlled by the community, or let's say by the UBT holders. If that is a cooperative or an association or a foundation, we'll see. We're talking with the lawyers here. But of course, solution can't be like today that Unibright controls in a large degree the testnet. This is not a way to move forward. That's not what we envision. It will be a completely decentralized thing. And more news to this will come shortly.
Yeah, and it's really important for us to make clear that it's not good for a decentralized network if centralized parties have too much of decision power on, for example, future metrics. And I mean, this is also kudos to Kyle and Provide at this point once again, because what Provide is also really great at is building these ecosystems and networks and getting all the contacts into the play. I mean, we not only met Kyle and Provide in the last 3 years, but really got to know great parties from all over the world. And we are currently talking to many of them for running testnet nodes. And of course, we also, if we want to build the decentralized governance structures, all the vital players that brought baseline to the point where it is now with that ratified standard like 2 days ago, of course, they all should play a role in how the decentralized governance structure is built within the next weeks. So this is perhaps a good point to have a short outlook on next year. So of course, currently we are building the base ledger mainnet, Provide, and all our friends from Consensus Mesh, and ensuring that base ledger will find the transition from a testnet to the mainnet. Of course, we built the mentioned community-driven decentralized base ledger governance structure, and we actively contribute to the baseline standard, or at least to the improvement proposals, where we just gave 2 examples with Trust Mesh and Synctree.
Yeah, and then of course we'll work our way into NFTs on Base Ledger or perhaps on baseline NFTs. And talking about tokens, we of course are talking about a well-incentivized, tokenized ecosystem with UBT, and that's why we have some bullet points for UBT as well on this slide. UBT is already established within all industries and clients, and we will continue to move it that way. We'll make sure that UBT stays the voucher for all products like it is today. And of course, part of it is also to establish UBT with all relevant exchanges for customers to get access to the token they need. So that's all we're working on. It's a very full schedule, but it's a very complete one as well. It feels like everything we're doing the last years now perfectly funnels into Base Ledger. So that's exciting, and UniPride and ProvidePride times ahead. So yeah, we are quite confident, and would like to thank you for your attention. If this format is not for questions, I guess we're coming at the end, or to the end now.
Yeah, and giving it back to Kyle and showing some more details on the Kona case, and
yeah, cool. And
thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good to have you, as always. So yeah, I think to continue from there, I'd like to show a quick demo of Shuttle.
If you're talking to us, we can't hear you, but
I'm not.
This might be a thing on our end.
Okay.
So so Shuttle is obviously this product we've been working on that aims to make it a lot simpler for organizations to adopt the baseline pattern. And so a quick demo from the context of Kona. Let me see if I can. Yeah, that looks good. So if I wanted to create, let's say my name was Andre, and I wanted to create a new ecosystem using the baseline, using the baseline pattern, I could use our Shuttle product to avoid the CLIs and to just, have a very straightforward experience. In setting that up. So I just created an organization and a vault on the provide stack using Shuttle. And let's say that I want to create a work group, a baseline work group for bottlers and raw material suppliers for under the Coke One North America account. So what this does, it really lets the user set up the configuration very quickly, and to share resources such as a multi-tenant SAP environment with ecosystem participants. So I'm essentially showing a demo of the ecosystem operator, leveraging the provide stack in a self-hosted way, meaning they're going to deploy all the infrastructure to their Azure environment. I'll enter some fake Azure credentials here. And then essentially, there's a bunch of bottlers, and Andre's gonna, why don't you join me on stage, Andre? Andre's gonna speak next anyway about the Kona ecosystem, and yeah, I got the slides. So Kona shares a multi-tenant SAP environment and makes that available as the IT services provider for Coke One or for Coca-Cola. There's 12 large bottlers that use that multi-tenant SAP system. And Shuttle makes it very easy to configure the middleware, for example, MuleSoft and SAP PI up front to expose those resources to those bottlers. So this is a pretty common integration pattern that you'll see across many enterprises. It's not that straightforward, and definitely not easy to configure, for organizations, especially in the current landscape. So Shuttle really makes it a lot easier. You can expose more than one system of record. We call those connections. So let's go on. So then you select a network. You select your layer 1 network. So let's say that we're going to use, since this is just a development environment, we would use Ropsten. And then for layer 2, we would use Base Ledger, for example. Why wouldn't we use Base Ledger? There's a disclaimer about the vault that's being used. And like this just really just streamlines the setup process and onboarding. Yeah, so once you connect your ecosystem, you know, you really are able to invite bottlers, and then they can invite raw material suppliers, and you have sort of that 2 degrees of separation that Shuttle provides in the ecosystem. And then that's where the workflow designer comes in, and we're looking at a 1.0 release of that in, you know, in the coming, definitely this year, in the coming months. Yeah, I like that. Okay, yeah. So let me also now share Andre's slides now that I've been able to give it a bit of a teaser there. You gotta flip it there.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Well, first of all, thanks everybody for coming here this Friday. Really excited to be here and represent Kona. So you heard history about Unibright and Provide. Just want to bring a little bit of history of Kona here. I met Kyle in 2018 in the hackathon ETH 1.0. And that time we were working on the idea of using the blockchain for our enterprise use cases. And I'm just bringing this slide here not to talk about what the Coca-Cola brand is, but really at the bottom left corner, the number shows that in order for the Coca-Cola brand to be in every store, there are 250 bottlers worldwide who are doing this on a day-to-day basis. And the bottlers are really the ones who are putting the liquid in the bottles and deliver it to the stores. So if you flip to the next slide, Kyle. That's the view of North America. In North America alone, we have about 60 bottlers who are independent franchise owners, and they operate their business, they have their own IT stacks, their own companies, and they're not connected to each other. And the goal of Kona was to onboard 12 largest bottlers in North America into one platform so we can provide them a single system to operate and run their business. You can flip to the next slide. And really the view of 12 bottlers is not limited by 12 bottlers, because we're playing the role of suppliers to other mid-sized, smaller bottlers, also the buyers of some of the product. And there's a complex supply chain processes involved here. So the idea of using blockchain in these processes was very clear. We want to bring it, we want to create a network of trust where all these participants can operate as they would use the single system. And today we're using our private network, definitely realizing ROI and benefits of using it, understanding why it's important to continue investing in the blockchain technology. But the private network really put you into these walled gardens. You're not able to easily onboard a supplier or a customer. Everybody's building their own private nets. So the idea of having a standard like baseline would help everybody understand how to baseline their system of records. Also having a connector to your system of record like Kona UBC that's now available on the SAP market is a great idea to have to your go to your supplier, talk to them, and onboard them very quickly using the standard and using the connector that is available for them to use. So I think I don't want to take more time here, but
I think another thing to add there, though, is just how important it is for the ecosystem to have partners like Kona to develop, you know, these production-ready solutions that automate onboarding. Just, you know, in such complicated environments. It's been a real special honor to work with you over the past year.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. And I think we look forward to implementing this in production, because it makes so much easier to pass this barrier of adoption of solution. And you know, I think for enterprises, it doesn't really matter, is it a blockchain, is it public, private? It's all about the efficiency and how they can run their business with less friction and less requirement on hiring resources, build API, connect to APIs, right? If you put this all behind the standard or behind a real product, then the adoption will be much easier.
Yeah, thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, who's got?
Hello? Yeah. Hi, everybody. How's it going tonight? Who is doing a project this weekend? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Really? Come on. Put up your hands if you're doing a project. All right, good. All right, put up your hands if you're out there in the virtual world doing a project. I can't see you anyway. Sorry. But good luck on all of your projects this weekend. I'm very excited about them. I had a call from some students that are doing a project, and they were like, "What can we do? What kind of ideas you have?" And about an hour and a half later, we had 6 really cool things. I'm like, "Okay, start all 6 of those businesses, please." And it was exciting. I think they're going to be entering, so hopefully they'll give you a run for money. Look, I'm here to do 2 things tonight. First, I'm going to report on our status as a community, as the Baseline Protocol community that we have been at for 2 years, and celebrate where we have come together. And second, I'm going to present to you the first of several projects and products, businesses that Consensus Mesh, the company I work for, will be putting out that I think really make the point of baselining, why it's important and why it's going to be a big deal, why it already is making a difference for the rise of verified multi-party workflows, really for the rise of collaboration without having to go full Monty on all of our data with our counterparties, right? And that's really the neat trick that we're trying to deal with. We want to control our information, but we also want to share our information with appropriate parties under the right conditions, and we don't want to have to do that the way we've been doing it up until now, handing it all over to some giant shared threat surface or handing it over to a SaaS or a cloud or something like that, right? So we want to do it differently, but we have these needs. We need to do things that make sense, and one of the things that makes sense is if you have sensitive private information, you need to share it with the right people, and you want it to be verified, but you don't want to have it blasted all over hell and gone. That's what baselining is all about. And in effect, really what it's about is the rise of what baseline is about, to me, is about the rise of verified workflows under zero knowledge. So it's the rise of zero knowledge, the rise of verified credentials, digital identities, and some blockchain into the everyday part of our lives as IT professionals. That's what baselining really, to me, is all about. I hope you agree. I think that as we do that, we're just following the footsteps of venerable projects like, and offerings like RSA, like the venerable hash, and things that are miraculous, but a little bit boring, that just get done, that get used by any common sense developer that is working in any important piece of work, right? Where's the hype cycle for the hash, for the lowly hash? It seems to me that it should have been a Gartner hype cycle for the hash, for RSA, right? For good security. Where were those hype cycles, right? And that hype cycle thing is going to be a theme in a second. So we hope the same happens with baselining, that we become just part of the foundation of how things work in modern society. And if you think about it, it's a pretty neat trick, right? To be able to share, but not share, to be able to have a decentralized system, but also not become, as often people, I've said before, just throw your data into, throw your data naked and into Burning Man, right? That's fun for some things, but not for companies. So what is baselining? Actually, I was going to show the little bit video, but who has not seen the little bit video yet? Should I show the video? Does that even work on this format? Can I show the video? All right, I'll give it a shot, if I can find it. Little bit. I don't know about you guys, but I really love little bit. If I can get it to work. I might not be able to. There we go. Does that work? Can you see it? Uh-oh, not sure it works. Nah, you're not seeing it. I'm going to move on from that. I think everybody who hasn't seen it, just look up Little Bit and Baseline Protocol on YouTube, and you'll get it. So, I mean, what baselining is and what it's all about, several speakers are going to be talking about tonight. We started with almost no companies. We had 3 companies. We have Paul Brody back there from Ernst & Young. Paul and I and York Rhodes from Microsoft and Nick Kritikos. Well, we're at a lunch in New York City 2 or 3 years ago. And, you know, we decided to just Paul just called up a couple of weeks later and said, let's do something. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? I don't know, like something. And, you know, Paul's a person of action. So we really got going on something. And that's one thing led to another. Baseline Protocol came out of it. But now we have over 1,000 people, over hundreds of companies that are involved. And those are just the people we know about. Every day I get somebody telling me, oh, I'm really into Baseline. And I'm like, yeah, well, why aren't you in the meetings, man? So that's my story, my question to anybody who's been getting interested in Baseline. Show up, get involved, be part of the community. Get on the Slack, get in the meetings. We have a new sign-up system. It's still getting bugs worked out, but it works. You can go right onto baseline-protocol.org, and you can get into the sign-ups and sign up for being a core dev. Who'd like to be a core dev? Everyone raise your hand. All right, see, everyone raised their hand. See, that's proof that everybody wants to be a core dev. You can stand for elections. So 21 people are standing for election of 11 seats into the technical steering committee. That's awesome. I really had no idea that we would have that many. And it's a testament to the work of folks like Claudia and Sonal and others who are making sure that the elections go well. And I have some exciting news. Yesterday, we ratified the standard. The standard has been ratified by the TSC. It is on its way to this personage here, Dan Burnett, the head of the project governance board, and also the head of the EEA. If you didn't know, Baseline Protocol is an EEA community project and in association with and run by OASIS, the venerable standards body, not the blockchain project. And this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. I don't know if you've read the thing yet. And great kudos to Anna Isofrank and Andreas Freund and Mehran Chakri from SAP and so many other people that read it, that wrote it, that edited it, and that made it work. Also, I should say our sponsors and friends at Provide for doing a heck of a lot of work on the API. So good, congratulations on all of that. We are now officially boring. And that's a good thing. As we know, what is our watchword? Boring is the new exciting. And that is exactly what we've done. That document is a masterpiece of boringness. And it is actually so beautiful. And now that it's ratified, I've promised to do this, and I'm almost regretting it, but I'm going to do an ASMR recording of it. Requirement number 5. So we will have a recording of the entire standard read into a microphone in an ASMR way so that people can go to sleep listening to the Baseline standard. I don't know how long it's going to take me to do it. It is a very long document. But anyway, congratulations to the team. We have made a major milestone. So awesome. Let me go back to my slideshow here. So the standard's been ratified. Tools are maturing. You just saw some. More are coming. Make some, build some. Splunk is out there. I think that Splunk is going to be huge in this, right? They're already integrated. People. What did you say earlier today, Nate? get splunked is a phrase, right? You want to splunk your SAP system. We also want to baseline the system, right? So, Splunk and baseline seems like a pretty good combination. So the tools are maturing. And also common sense use cases are rising. You've heard about Coke, you've heard about Servicenow. It's frustrating, but there are some things that I can't, that they're just chickens. They're not coming out and like Coke or Coke One North America did, where they're actually talking about the work in the beginning. I'd say if a big company like that can do it, anybody can. But there are some major organizations, entities, government-type organizations, and major firms that are working on baseline projects. And I'm very hopeful about them because baselining just makes sense, right? It's not like it's going to get stuck in POC hell forever because it makes sense. It makes sense to IT people, it makes sense to CISOs, it makes sense to the CTO, the CIO, and you're not going to experience, I hope, the kind of experience I had when we started blockchain in the enterprise 5-6 years ago, where we delivered this beautiful blockchain, a private blockchain project to the head of department at a major bank, very proudly presented it. We did such a great job, looked at it and went, thank you. I've already got one of those. And that was the end of that project, right? So at least we don't have to get stuck in POC hell. It's on you guys to do great work and to solve this magical problem, sharing while also not throwing things to the wind. So now I'm going to talk about something completely different, a use case I can talk about. NFTs have come to the baseline protocol. And you're going, what? I thought this was an enterprise thing. It is, but in a fever dream, we figured out how to do NFTs with Baseline and Base Ledger, and we'll talk about it. And right now, this is the world premiere of NFTs on Baseline. Now, let's get real about NFTs for a second. NFTs, what is the elephant in the room? The emperor's penguin's clothes, if you will, of NFTs, right? What is it? Well, of course, it's that you want to share your NFT, so you put it on IPFS, but then it's made out of ones and zeros, right? So what have you really purchased for your $68 million? A receipt that says you purchased something for $68 million, and it has an address that anybody can go to, download, and make another NFT. And also, by the way, if you violated copyright or licensing on that image, and somebody tries to do a cease and desist on you, it's on IPFS. Think about that for a second. Interesting problem, right? How long, because you can't take it down. They say cease and desist, you say, I can't cease or desist. It's up there forever. I don't know that I would want to be on the other end of that problem. So there are problems with NFTs. And I don't mean to say that NFTs are a bad idea. I'm just saying that in the current state, this Gen Xer doesn't get it quite, that I'm going to buy something that I cannot control, because if you think about it, it's not like your Rolex. Your Rolex has atoms. It is unique by design, and it's a masterpiece of engineering, right? Of design and engineering, and you have it, and okay, so you have flex, but you also have a piece of work, a piece of art that is unique, that you can control, and that is exclusive to you. Wouldn't it be nice if you can have that for ones and zeros? All you really have with the current state of NFTs is a receipt that is unique and exclusive and controlled by you, but you don't have what if the actual art could be as well? And that is the conundrum that I think is interesting. So you have these great people out there that want to support the artists. They're willing to pay. They've got the means and the appreciation to pay huge sums of money sometimes to support this artist. But why don't we just say that? Why don't we just say, oh, great, I'm a patron of this artist. I just gave them a lot of money to patronize them, to support them. Why do we turn it into an ownership thing? Well, it's because there's something to that, right? If you're a collector, you want something that you can control. that you can possess, that you can own. And here's the punchline, and also to share. What does that sound like? Same problem, right? It's the baseline problem. I want to control it, I want to possess it, I want to own it. It needs to be exclusive, but I also want to be able to share it. So, tree trunk, the NFT, tree trunk NFT is now treetrunk.io. You can go there right now. It's very minimal. I'm going to show you a tech demo. This is not a drop. This is not a release. This is not a product yet. It is a tech demo. And we thought it would be a good thing to show to a hackathon full of developers so that you guys can tear it apart and tell us why this is dumb so that we can then decide whether we're going to actually release it. So the project for the weekend, if you care to meet it, is to show us why this won't work. The story is, hey, you're unique. Own it. Which, by the way, I think is a pretty good slogan. Create and own private, exclusive, original art. Make unique signed and numbered prints and build a royalties empire. That's what we're going to offer. Now here's how it works. Cryptolithography is what we're calling this, and it's the basis of the TT NFT. You make art, not just the token, but the art itself, verifiably unique and exclusively owned. What the file looks like, here's the Mona Lisa in the matrix of ones and zeros. That's on the right, that's what it looks like, right? So, art files can look the same while having different files with different ones and zeros, slightly different ones and zeros. So you'll see those red dots, those are flips from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. So here's the trick to the tree trunk NFT. You make a replica of the original, but flip some bits. You can prove then, you put a proofer that shows that it's a child of the parent. Everybody with me so far? And then you prove it without revealing it, the original, to anyone. And then you can prove with another technique that you didn't copy the bits before you sold them. It's in, I can prove that what's in this hidden box looks like this public file and is the original that was used to generate the public file, but is not the public file. No one ever sees your exclusive, unique, controlled, owned art, but you can transfer it to somebody, right? You can prove things about it, but nobody ever gets a hold of those ones and zeros. They are unique and hidden. And there's a lot of mystique, I think, that you could put in that, right? So first thing you do is you baseline the original. The original art goes into a ZK circuit that we've designed. Andreas Freund is one of the authors of that. And ZK proof goes into base ledger. And then the base ledger location goes into the NFT, not the IPFS location. The actual file we call a root file, which is considered the original right now. You've taken the original and thrown that away. That one's garbage. Now you have a secret set of ones and zeros, which, by the way, you could delete, you could kill it, you could destroy it. Just like in lithography, if you've ever done lithographic signed numbered prints, sometimes you'll see a video or a picture of the artist destroying the plates that were used to make the prints, thereby suggesting that you have a limited edition, right? So you could just destroy the print. The only thing you've done is make it impossible to generate any more prints, right? But all the children prints that you made are still valid. They can be proven to be a child of the original, which I think is kind of a cool idea. You can make signed numbered prints from that, which can be public and absolutely go on IPFS. And you kind of want one at least to be on IPFS so that everybody can see and enjoy the art. But again, not the original file. It's a different set of ones and zeros. Or you can make those private too, and you just recursively done what you did with the original root. So why is this cool? Because of this. If you can do signed numbered prints, you can do this. You can print your museum piece, you can print your private prints, you can print your public prints, and you can have lineages. This lineage, what if we, and we're going to do this, by the way, what if you had like a chat system that you could, everybody who is a child of the root gets to be part of in a channel, but also everybody in this pathway is in their own private channel. What if I don't know, Beyonce bought this one. Now you're in a private channel with Beyonce. That's cool. I like that idea. So it creates community. Joe Lubin really had this thought that this is a way of constructing communities of interest around specific pieces of work. And you all have a reason to support the work because you want more people buying these children. That's a terrible way to put that. I'm going to see the point. So now you've got this, and this is just illustrative, right? But you have inclusiveness because somebody who doesn't have a lot of money can buy this one. And somebody with a whole lot of money really wants this one because of the royalty flows that are coming up through that channel. And if you are the owner, if you're the creator, does this not look like a better business model for creators than just riding a hype wave that's going to die out because everything like this dies out? The App Store, the original metaverse thing, remember Second Life? These kinds of hype waves definitely die down. And when it dies down, what you want to have lasting is a business model like this, where you effectively have multi-level marketing and support for the artists in a way that they don't have today. Imogen Heap in 2015 famously went direct with her customers, right? Cutting out the middleman of royalty stream. But that was still just one step. This pays forever. Whenever any of the children tokens are sold, Imogen Heap would get paid every time. I like this. And everybody that helped that happen down here, all the way up, they got some royalties too. I like that a lot. Not so good for selling soap, but great for art. Anybody that gets that reference, you get it. Tree trunk NFT, the demo. Do we have time for the demo, Kyle, or shall we do it later? Are you serious? Just a couple minutes. I can do 2 minutes if I can get out of this. I gotta just hang on for a second. What do you guys think of that? Pretty good? All right. So I'm going to make the first NFT this way. I am going to, Emilio, the Emperor's Clothes Penguin, is going to come over here. Ruh-roh. Hang on. I might need to screen share. I'll just screen share desktop. Okay. So now I've pulled the, what I did before that you didn't see was I pulled the picture into this file. I'm going to create the root original. So that's going to upload the image, it's saving the data. And this is a demo, a tech demo. So this would be now going into end-to-end encryption and going into an EDV, a data vault that you control. So we can't rug pull you. It would be like on your ledger or any kind of storage that is TE. And it doesn't have to be that way. You could just make it encrypted so that your token is the only way to unencrypt it. But this would be, in a EDV would be even more powerful, right? Because then there's just no way to get down into that thing. Now I'm going to mint it. Hey, MetaMask, a little plug for my company there, or my sister company, I should say. Now we're going to download that proof. Now in this case, that proof would go onto Base Ledger, but we didn't have time to get to that step, so we didn't do that. And in the interest of time, I could go, yeah, this is going to take a while to go through. If anybody would like to see the demo in person, I'll do it later, but I don't want to take too much time away from other, you're good? Okay. So create first print now. So now we've got the baseline proof and we have the address of the contract. This is real. And we're going to create the first print. So it's creating the print, minting it, generating a print proof, which I can get. So there's my, my print proof. It's pulling it off of IPFS. In this case, we went straight to the public. And then we're going to mint that print. In this case, we're only minting one print. We did this in under 2 weeks, by the way. We wrote this code in 2 weeks. So now we've minted the print, and success. Okay, there we go. It's not the best UI, but it's pretty good, I think. Again, tech demo, not a product yet. So now we're going to verify it. So I'm going to pull the file over. I'm going to put the proof in. And I'm going to put the file in. I'm going to put the wrong file in. And I'm going to put There we go. This should, unless I might have goofed this up. Yeah, not verified. Wrong picture. Right? I think you get the rest of it, right? So I'll stop there. That's the end of the demo. And I'll just go back very quickly and wrap things up. What are the capabilities and limitations of this thing? So you can create crypto lithographs of art, music, and similar files. And you can use the process on a file, but you can't use it on a file where changing any of the ones and zeros would destroy the file. So there's certain kinds of files this would work for. You can use the process to create novel business models and game logic. Think about like a vampire game where you need to prove that you're all part of the same, hidden vampire family, I guess, something like that. But you can't walk back a leak of the root file. If you leak the root file, you can't restore exclusivity. You don't know if somebody didn't copy the ones and zeros, right? You can improve royalties and affiliate marketing and tracking and settlement and run lineage royalties, but you can't run lineage royalties on a mainnet without breaking the bank. So this really does require an L2. Fortunately, we know a few, right? Matic and even Base Ledger is a kind of L2, so interesting. And finally, what else can you do with this? You can make high-stake games, where small differences can create big effects, where nobody should ever see the file, the platform shouldn't see the file. You could surprise yourself. You could, like little tiny differences in some attribute, like your magic casting capability, one tiny little digit change over your other family members, and the magic would be completely different or something more powerful or different. There's all sorts of cool things, and my favorite is you don't have to sell your unique character. You can just sell prints of your character to players and then receive a percentage of winnings, which I think is kind of a cool idea. Also in industrial applications, exclusive passes, privacy preserving cross-platform fan engagement, advertising tracking, influencer marketing, supply chain documents like bombs and balls and specs, things like what my brother's into in the pharmaceutical industry. I think this is pretty cool. It's got a lot of applications. It's funny because I've been making fun of NFTs for a while, about a year, and it was my fate to kind of go, okay, but it would be cool if, right? Here, our roadmap is, right now we've just delivered the tech demo. We're gonna get feedback from devs, improve it and harden it, make it good, add key features like the minting of the lineages, the multi-level royalties, encrypted data vaults, and then finally we're gonna launch this for artists with a marketplace and an API so other marketplaces can add that feature to their marketplace. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Nicely done, John. Don't put data on a blockchain. Put NFT proofs on a blockchain. Next up, we have Nate Mccarvey of Splunk. It's been really awesome. Been able to work with Nate and his team on a few things recently. I'm sure Nate is going to talk a lot about data and how you can leverage Splunk to extract insights. Thanks for being here, Nate.
No problem. When you grant me access to share, I will share. All right. And John, no worries about taking some of my time. It's just going to cost you that NFT. All right, I have access now. to set something up. Let's see if this works.
Time, billions of people around the world are doing things. They're building, learning things, going places. Have you ever wondered, how does all this stuff get done? How do we build rockets that go all the way to Mars? How does the picture of a cat get from one phone to a billion phones? The answer is data. Back in the day, getting things done was pretty simple. If you were building a car, you had an assembly line. Every process was out in the open. If you wanted to check on things, you could just walk up to Fred and say, "What's up, Fred?" You knew what was happening because you could see it happening. Today, that's not so easy because everything is digital. And you can't exactly walk up to a server or an app and strike up a meaningful conversation. So the question is, in today's digital world, how do we know what's happening?
Yeah, that's a real key question. How do we know what's happening? There's so much going on. Everybody's got their own systems of record. It's pretty chaotic. And if we step back for a minute and we think about like what is happening, we're actually becoming digital even faster, and we're creating new digital things. And even existing digital things are being adopted even more. Just over the last 10 months, the internet has seen a 70% increase in use. And we can know why, everybody working from home. And this has also caused a 76% increase in commerce. And now, for the first time, more than half of all customer engagements are completely digital in nature. What this means is that data has absolutely become an essential service. And organizations that can best harness their data, they're going to get ahead, they're going to win. The ones that don't know how to handle data or make the most use of it, they're not going to do so well. So over the next 7 minutes what I'd like to do is show you that the next wave of digitization is here, and you all watching online or right here in person are the ones that are actually making it happen. If I'm successful today, what you're gonna know is exactly what this next wave of digitization is, and you're gonna know how to capitalize on it. See if you notice the moment when you recognize how you can unleash data from your organization in ways that haven't been possible until very recently. I'm going to give you a little hint of what's to come. So if we think about the internet, what the internet has really allowed us to do is transfer information in a digital manner. And blockchains, they've more recently enabled us to transfer things like value in a digital manner. But when we apply newer advancements in technologies to blockchains, what we get are some pretty incredible applications of it. And just think about what's going to be possible with zero-knowledge proofs and smart contracts, fully digital automatic agreements for the first time in humankind. It's going to be quite a ride. And this is all thanks to one simple fact. As we, as humans, figure out how to increase the flow of information, it leads to completely new products, services, and productivity. And just take a look over time, like when we had mainframes, we got a little better computation, and then we were able to transfer this a little bit more, and we just keep creating more and more data. And if we can increase this flow, it increases prosperity. And it's not something that is going to stop. Every about 20 years, we start to see a new wave come along. So the hardware wave, the software wave, the network wave, and now the Web3 wave. And each one of these waves is just a new technology that builds on the previous. So you're not seeing any of these other technologies go away. You're just seeing the value of the highest margin opportunities move to the newer layer. Like today, I wouldn't really want to be in the business of creating new PCs or new computers, but I do want to be in Web3 because that's where all the opportunity, or the biggest opportunity is, the margins, the new things that haven't been thought of, and the people here are the ones that are making that happen. But there's a problem. Data is still siloed way too much, and we need to free it, and Web3 is going to let us do that. And this includes data in enterprises and organizations. But when I say data, I really mean any data. For example, when my daughter was born, exactly 1,134 days ago, I, like any good parent, immediately stored data information about her in a system of record, in Splunk in this case. So her weight, her social security number, latitude, longitude, and then I took a hash of that data, put it on Ethereum mainnet with some other metadata, And I felt good. I can prove that this information existed at the point in time, coincides with my daughter's birth. We can use hospital records. How do I know the hospital actually recorded the same information that I recorded? They have the same social security number. They're not going to give me access to their back-end systems. This is a problem that Baseline could have solved. But unfortunately, baselining children is not going to be, I think, one of the most popular initial use cases, contrary to what John was talking about, baselining children. But maybe he'll prove me wrong there. But anyway, so the point is, baselining allows you to really synchronize these systems together. So consider some of your systems. So every organization has some degree of IT. And you probably have ERP systems, CRM, you're tracking business processes, contract statuses, payroll, whole bunch of stuff. And you have to deal with your partners, your competitors, your customers, your vendors, your auditors, and they all have to store a lot of this data as well. And how do they store it? Well, they take what they think is the agreement and they put it in their own system of record. And then inevitably, over time, either from the moment they started storing it, or when the first change order comes in, or when the data is tampered with or corrupted, things get out of sync. And this causes a gigantic headache for organizations. And you know what? To be honest, I don't even think a lot of us recognize this happens. We've just become accustomed to the pain. Things like net 30 exists and say, oh, net 30, at least that's not net 45. It'll only take me 30 days to get paid. Well, that is a gigantic inefficiency due to like human intervention having to happen a lot of times. Net 30 should stand for net 30 seconds. And that's where we're going to be able to go with this kind of technology. So this actual exact slide I showed at a executive summit 4 years ago to 200 CXOs in the room saying, hey, blockchain's going somewhere. It's going to be able to solve this problem. But it couldn't solve the problem back then. And so the holy grail of synchronizing enterprise systems just remained a dream until Baseline came along. And Baseline allows your organization, your enterprise infrastructure to just get in sync. So like John was saying, at Splunk, we used to tell customers, oh, you've got IT problems, you've got security problems, you've got business analytics problems, just Splunk it. It was simple, just Splunk it. Get the data inside of Splunk and you can ask any question of it and get the answer. Well, that's where we should go with business synchronization. Just baseline IT. Just baseline your infrastructure. All right. So some of you might be thinking, wait. Are you talking about like sharing data with competitors and stuff? There's no way I'm going to share data with my competitors. I've got all the, I'm not going to do that. Well, sometimes it actually makes sense. So imagine you're an insurance company and you have to pay out a claim to a client or a customer. Well, how do you know that they aren't also doing that same claim with one of your competitors, one of your insurance competitors? Well, it'd be great to have a shared ledger with all the insurance companies and you could solve that fraud use case. But anyone here knows I can't share data on a public ledger. Like, not only is that bad for a number of reasons, I have security, regulation, compliance requirements. I simply can't share that data. So how is this problem solved with the Baseline protocol if blockchains couldn't solve this by themselves? Well, I think that the main reason this is more capable of this now is because of the advancements in zero-knowledge proofs combined with distributed ledger technologies. I believe that what secure HTTP did for the web, zero-knowledge proofs will do for Web 3. And if you think about it, our entire day relies on secure HTTPS. Like, even, who knows, maybe if I didn't have HTTPS, maybe my Uber would have been stolen on the way over here. But what HTTPS enabled was the transfer of information in a way where the data or information is not revealed in clear text. So it allows you to transfer information without revealing it. Zero-knowledge proofs, they do something a bit different. They allow you to use information without transferring it at all. And that's really remarkable. So all the applications we rely on today that didn't exist before HTTPS, that same sort of thing I think is going to happen with the application of zero-knowledge proofs on a shared ledger for everybody. All right, so, and I mean any data. So this is gonna be really useful for synchronizing business systems, but you're still gonna have IT and infrastructure and security problems. And if you really wanna get answers from your data, you need to put it in a place where you can analyze it. That's why we built Splunk. It's the data to everything platform. You get Splunk access to your data, and you can investigate, monitor, analyze, alert, act at any scale. We have a customer that's doing over 8 petabytes a day into Splunk. So imagine a search over a month of that data. It's quite large, and the structure doesn't matter at all. And so when people think about Splunk, they usually say, oh yeah, I've heard of Splunk, it's that IT thing or it's that security thing. And they're right. We're well known for being able to take logs, metrics, and traces, combine them all together, let you correlate across them, and answer any question that's relevant to that data. What a lot of people don't know is that we've been putting effort into adding ledger data too. And when I say ledger data, I don't just mean transaction data. This is not another block scanner. This is the ledger data, it's the metadata around it, and it's other enrichment capabilities too that allow you to correlate across all of these other data sources too, and even across chains and layers all in one place. You can search one Ethereum address and you can see everything it's done across all chains, even with bridges involved. Anyway, the one way you can do that is using Splunk Connect for Ethereum. So when we've worked with like well over 100 organizations now, and we saw that they were all building or most of them were building their own tooling from the ground up to kind of extract some data, put it in a relational database, and it was just a bad idea for so many reasons, like maintaining it, performance, security. You don't really want to put that data in a database anyway, and so we said, hey, why don't we build this? Why don't we solve this problem at scale? We're really good with data, and let's make it completely open source and give it to everybody. You don't even have to use Splunk Splunk Connect for Ethereum. It's being used a bunch of places. Maybe York will talk about one place it's being used later today. And yeah, like I said, it does a lot of cool stuff like automatic ABI decoding and contract fingerprinting. And so when you kind of take these things together, all of the logs, the metrics, the traces, the ledger data, you can really build anything you want. So Provide has an awesome Splunk implementation. This is a Splunk dashboard where they're looking at all of their different services in real time, and they can see the health of all of them. If they were running out of resources, they could see why. If they're having errors, they could drill down and see why. At any point, they can go down to the raw data wherever it is. So now it just clicked on Ethereum, and we can see these are real transactions happening. This is what a raw transaction looks like. This is a smart contract. And you can do all sorts of analytics here and correlate in many, many different ways. Yeah, and so, like I said, we worked with so many different organizations, Provide included, and we see a common set of gaps that most organizations have. And so we try to help close those gaps. We want to help advance Web3, make people, make it suck less to adopt this stuff. And if you want to get in contact with us, just email blockchain@splunk.com. And if you still don't understand what we do, because I didn't really want to make this a Splunk session, you can check out what we're doing with blockchain stuff at unblock.splunkdlt.com. And I just want to end with, remember, this is like the next wave, and it's still the beginning, and you guys are the ones making it happen.
Nate, you guys are making it happen. Splunk rocks.
We're all going to make it. Let's go.
Splunk
Have a good evening.
rocks. So dinner's at 6, but make sure you pay attention to Derek while he's talking. That's all I got. So Derek Carlton, founder and CEO of Synadia, creator of Nats. Derek's a good friend and a phenomenal technologist behind Nats and Provide. We have architected our stack from the very beginning with Nats as well. So Derek, thanks for being here. Hey, Derek. What's that?
Hey everyone. Glad to join everyone virtually. Good afternoon, good evening. See, I will share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this. Again, thanks so much for having me. There's a couple of folks running around with big N Nets t-shirts on. So if you have any questions towards the end, there we go. Feel free to ask them some questions, and happy to hear from everyone. So Nate from Splunk was just talking about the flow of information. And my name is Derek Carlton, and I've spent the better part of my career working on the flow of information, the intelligent flow of information. And so the talk that I wanted to give was around rethinking connectivity. And what's interesting is that I think folks probably are aware that we've undergone massive transformations in connectivity as humans, from the early 93, 94 of the internet to the global cellular network, to essentially, after we've been in a pandemic for 18 months or so, a profound sense of hybrid connectivity. Unfortunately, the systems that we are depending on, the systems underneath the covers that we're actually dealing with, kind of look like this. And this is a problem, because I really do, we've flowed from the data economy to a connective economy. And I think that is incredibly important to understand. And if this doesn't necessarily resonate, there's a couple things that we can point to that kind of highlight this in a really big way. Our own biological, brain, right? In terms of the most important thing, and that thing is the way things are connected. If you looked at data centers back when I started in the 80s, you cared deeply about the computers and the disk drives and the spinning, rust and the lights that were blinking. If you go into any modern data center today, all you see is wires and cables and things. The importance cannot be understated of how powerful this transformation can be. If we look at where we are today with baseline, and of course Web 3.0 talk and IPFS, and of course going back to even e-commerce and such like that, this is actually, from a ecological standpoint, a very short period of time that we actually got all of this kind of to come to fruition in the last probably 30 years or so. I believe the real value in innovation is enabling the secure and hyper-connected world, right? The intelligent flow of this information. And I really do believe we're in the middle of a massive, massive transformation that, because of all the world events that are going on, it might be hard to really see what's going on. But I can promise you it's going to be radically different 10 years from now than it was probably 50 years ago. It's accelerating at an exponential rate. So some of the limits of today's technology, why the lady plugging in the switchboard do I think is so applicable? Well, if you actually kind of peel that onion and look, everything's still based on addressing the discovery of DNS and host names and IPs, right? And even though we've tried to paper patch around a lot of these limitations, it's still the fact that you have to kind of figure out who I'm trying to call, what phone number they might be at, whether it would be a desk phone, wall phone from the 70s and 80s. And even before that, maybe calling the person, you know, in this slide to connect us, right? Everything's an implied point-to-point conversation. It's a one-to-one conversation. Through the pandemic, how many people have been on Zoom calls that are only one-to-one? They happen for sure, but most of them are a group setting, right? It's this M-to-N type stuff. Everything is pull-based. I ask a question and I get an answer, but obviously there's push-based patterns that make a lot of sense, especially in this new world order that we're about to go into. There's the notion of front end and back end personas. They're different, right? The front ends can maybe run on a web browser or run on your phone. The back end should be running in a cloud behind a firewall and behind a load balancer and a VPN and things like that. And HTTP is not our future. It was an amazing technology that got us this far, but it should not be the state of the art on how the technologies and how digital system services and devices actually communicate. So a possible solution, right, around rethinking connectivity is, well, what happens if we had totally location independent addressing? Doesn't matter. I don't know where any of you are. You probably don't know necessarily where I am. We don't know the physical substrate that the electrons are going over, right, to broadcast this video, whether it's satellite or cell or fiber or wireless or Wi-Fi. End-to-end communications, meaning never really understand who could potentially be an audience member for any type of communication. That's very, very hard, and we're actually kind of have these implicit biases that we might not be totally aware of. Push and pull based, right? I don't want to keep polling for things. I want things to come to me and allow me to keep synchronizing the things that I might care about. And it might not be me as a human. It might be me as a digital system, service or device. Secure by default. Again, not sure the age of the audience per se, but I remember, you know, when we didn't even have a green lock on the internet, right? So you couldn't do banking, you couldn't do e-commerce. Amazon as a, you know, Goliath in e-commerce couldn't have even existed. So this new world order, it has to be secure by default. We can't wait 10 to 15 years to actually figure out the green lock here. And you can do things patterns-wise like microservices, streaming. You know, you can do any pattern you want. You don't have to keep picking and choosing different technologies based on different patterns that you actually might want to enact. Decentralized by default, I think that's kind of a big theme of a lot of the folks, both in the audience and online looking at this, around what does it actually look like? And I really do believe we're at the very, very beginning of a, again, massive transformation from, you know, centralized architectures, centralized entities, whether they be countries or governments or very large technology companies, to a very peer-to-peer type of collective. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then this notion of intelligent persistence, which we'll talk about in a second. So Synadia uses a technology called Nats.io. Nats is an open source CNCF project that I created about 10 years ago or so to power a project that I was working on at VMware called Cloud Foundry, which was kind of a platform as a service. It's a modern connected technology that ticks all of those boxes that we were looking at. Location independence, no implied one-to-one communication, secure by default. And again, it has that intelligent persistence layer that we will highlight in a second. It's a family of open source clients. We have about 46 now, I think, client implementations, and a server that's written in Go. Again, rock solid's been around for about 10 years, that is lightweight enough that you could run it on a Raspberry Pi Zero if you wanted to. And so these things are not like your father's message broker or something maybe like Kafka, you know, big and heavyweight, but think of them as very lightweight, very easy to Lego brick together to form global meshes that can transcend any cloud, any edge, any geo, things like that. And so Nats can actually power these decentralized peer-to-peer systems, streaming systems, microservices, intelligent persistence, and this wave of intelligent adaptive edge, which we're at Synadia are seeing quite a bit of activity around, you know, taking on not only IoT or Industry 4.0, but this notion of collective intelligence using physical substrates like 5G and Starlink and things like that. This collective intelligence is really important to me. I believe that this massive wave of propagation around machine learning and artificial intelligence to get interactions with systems to be more and more intelligent need more and more information, intelligent data, so to speak. And a lot of the companies that we associate with pushing the envelope around machine learning and artificial intelligence are very, very large. So they have a lot of gap to keep going, to keep improving the experience for their customers without ever having to go kind of outside of their own ecosystem. But I can promise you that's going to end very quickly, meaning that a technology like this needs to be more like Switzerland. It can't be necessarily owned and dictated by any given large company. You're going to have to start sharing. For example, Nate was talking about that around insurance claim, I think, just in the last talk. But you can imagine even smart cities, right? They're immediately in a collective intelligence situation. And that means that this type of a system, again, the connectivity layer, so to speak, in the intelligent persistence, it also cannot be owned and operated only by a single company or organization. And so we've strived very hard from an open source ecosystem perspective to make the servers, very, very powerful and useful as a single server. But then you can cluster them together. Then you can cluster clusters of clusters together. And we'll talk about security in a second, but all of this with a zero trust, secure relationship between different providers or different enablers. And very importantly is what we call a leaf node. And don't concentrate on the leaf node. I'm very bad at naming things. But what a leaf node says is that you can actually join a system and run your own servers. So you can actually extend a utility. So like think about it, if you can generate your own electricity, or the example that I give quite a bit is I could buy my own cell tower and stick in my backyard for when I'm at the house. That is very, very possible with NATS technology. Matter of fact, it's by design, because we don't believe that whatever we contemplate and think of and build and deploy will ever meet the needs of what, again, we're about to go into in terms of this radically different ecosystem. Jetstream is our persistence layer, but it's not just the notion of persisting messages, right? Which is what NATS is throwing around. And people can get very tied up in the fact that, oh, NATS is just sending messages. What can we really do with this? But obviously, the video feeds that people are seeing, both in the audience and online, are being delivered through multiple substrates, through Ethernet packets, cellular, whatever that is. And so the notion that NATS at its core is a pub sub messaging type of a system actually quickly abstracts out away. And so with Jetstream, we can store messages, obviously, but we can horizontally scale that, right? So we can select your desired replication, your disaster recovery strategy. It's secure and reliable, meaning both data at rest and in motion are encrypted, and data is strongly hashed and checked every time it's loaded back off of disk and moved around. Again, that intelligent flow, so to speak. The notion of intelligent digital twins. Can I capture the state of something and then replicate it somewhere else in a digital form and actually interact with that in a meaningful way? And can that not just be one, can it be as many as I possibly want, right? And Jetstream has the notion of both one-to-one mirrors, meaning I have a stream of messages that I want to mirror over here, or I can say I want to collect all of the messages and the streams of messages from every remote being a plant, factory, store, distribution center, oil rig, airplane, car, it doesn't matter. Cube satellite we've done. And we can actually mux them into a single stream, right, that actually represents all of those remote endpoints. And very importantly, again, because of the fact that Jetstream is meant to be an extremely useful and general tool, is the concept of materialized views. And what I mean by that is of course, we can store a single message, and things like MQTT, which we can natively connect to, they care deeply about that. But we can also store a globally ordered set of messages. No matter where you access this from, anywhere in the world, the order is maintained. It's exactly the same. And building upon those two simple constructs, we can start to do incredibly powerful things with a single technology, which is we can abstract out key value stores over this, secret stores with real-time updates where, again, with the power of NATS, I can say, I want to be very interested in this subset of this key value store, and I want to be updated anytime anything changes. Don't make me keep asking and polling, actually push the updates to me in real time. And of course, we can also do object store, right? You can take anything that you want per se and chop it up into a bunch of little messages. And guess what? We've actually abstracted that out as well. The key part on the globally ordered set of messages that's not to be missed also is that the fact that we can do this means that we can replicate any state machine anywhere securely and reliably and one-to-N. In other words, it doesn't have to just be one-to-one. So you can, replicate databases. You can replicate all kinds of things with a simple technology like this. NGS is our version of a global utility that's based off of NATs. We believe very strongly that this new world that we're going into, this very peer-to-peer decentralized world, is going to be run off of things that are utilities, not silo tech where I buy a copy, you buy a copy, and those two copies never will talk to each other, which is, a lot of enterprises and things do that. But NATS was purposely built to run a global utility that, again, because of the leaf nodes, can be extended. In other words, you're never blocked by what NGS is today. You can actually set up your own server, your own clusters of servers that interact at a very, very fast rate for yourself. But obviously, because of the intelligent routing, when you need things that are on the larger global utility, the messages just flow there intelligently and securely. We can do things like microservices and streaming and persistence and materialized views from anywhere and anything in the world, telephone poles, microcontrollers. And essentially, we give you the equivalent of like a SIM card. We call them the credential files, which uses public and private key cryptography to get access. So you don't need VPNs and firewalls and load balancers and all that kind of stuff. It really is kind of I'm dating myself here, but a digital dial tone, right, for the modern world. Now, baseline and NGS, this is where things become pretty interesting as well. When we look at baseline and we look at this peer-to-peer decentralized system, Kyle and John were kind enough to reach out to us and say, hey, we think there is a potential here, right? There's going to be a level of sophistication around communications and connectivity that we haven't seen before. And HTTP, is probably not going to be it, So things that are starting to feel very peer-to-peer and decentralized, but are based on this construct like IPFS, they might have to cede to something that presents exactly what IPFS is trying to do, meaning the data that I want is anywhere that I want it to be intelligently. But I would imagine at the end of the day, it will not be based on point-to-point communications and things like HTTP. So specifically to baseline though, right, we've got, decentralized authorization and permissioning, and we're starting to work very closely with Kyle and Provide and John and the larger community. And we're excited to be more involved as we go forward. High-level controls of ingress and egress, streamable, replayable, new participants easily can be added, globally fault tolerant. I call it xCloud, xEdge, xGeo, anywhere, anytime, anything. And also in terms of the lower OpEx, right? This Provide stack is the reference implementation for baseline. It's an OASIS standard that's been the Provide implementation. I apologize, that shouldn't say lower OpEx, it should say Provide. That's my fault. But the OASIS standard, which I think John says was ratified, which is awesome. And Provide is actually using NATs and connectivity to NGS as its core architecture. And Kyle and I have been going back and forth collectively since 2017, both with a shared sense of this vision of what's about to happen in terms of technology and the world that we live in. And so we're super excited. I really think that it is a great time to look at neutral open source technologies that can really revolutionize the way we connect things. And it doesn't mean that we're going to change the way we communicate, right? So I'm on Zoom, I'm going through a video, but even in the 80s, if I gave you a call on your wall phone or desk phone, the conversation would still be kind of similar, but we couldn't imagine going back to that world, right? And I believe that technologies like NATs, maybe something else that actually kind of drag in this notion of the internet, and then the notion of the secure internet, the global cellular network, and then of course the operators actually allowing you to switch operators and roam intelligently with decent speeds, right? that now feels natural to us, and we wouldn't want to go backwards. And I think the same thing's about to happen with kind of the future of the way digital system, service, and devices connect and communicate and make our lives a lot better. Here's some of the enterprises that are leveraging NATs. There's probably a larger group, but folks that are looking at NATs are kind of like, I've never heard of it. I don't know about it. You're in a good set of company. Like I said, it's over 10 years old now. The Jetstream technology is about 1.5 years old with the intelligent persistence, but we've already got people in production. Matter of fact, some of the folks that are on this slide here. And we're super excited about where things are going. We think that this is just the beginning, as a couple of the other speakers have said. If you're interested in some more information, there again, the big ends should be, there's a couple of folks there, Brian and Steve. Please grab them, ask them any questions. And then there's some more information here if you want to find some things out. But thank you. I really appreciate the time. And yeah, connect your world.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Great presentation.
Uh, can you still hear me?
Can you send me the link? Can you send me the link on Slack as well? Please, I will leave the session and I click on the room in Slack.
You should be good. You should be good.
Hello?
Nicola, can you hear me? You got to unmute. Nicola, can you hear me? Nicola.
Santico. Hey.
Yeah.
There is some echo. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
You're good to present.
Okay, I will share my screen. Okay, can I start? Okay, I assume I can start. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And this is a session about Servicenow and Provide. My name is Nicola Attico. I'm advisory solution consultant in Servicenow. And what I would like to present right now is the work that we did over the past few months, almost a year, I would say right now with Provide, in order to integrate the Servicenow platform and the Provide stack. So I would like to start with a little bit of introduction about Servicenow. I don't know if you already heard about the solution, but this is a brief intro about what Servicenow is delivering. And it's a company that has been founded in 2004 and is growing quite aggressively. An average growth rate has been around 33% every year. And what is very interesting about Servicenow is that it's providing a platform that allows to build workflows in a low-code way. So it's a very simple and effective way for businesses to start implementing processes and application, and also start using the application that are available natively out of the box on the Servicenow environment. And if we have a look to the Servicenow business model, this is what we call the platform slide. It is basically describing how Servicenow is allowing businesses around the world to basically digitize all kind of business processes and digital workflows. So what you see in the middle is actually what we call the platform, the Now platform actually. And this is a low-code development environment that allows to build applications on top of it. And what is very important about the Now platform is that it allows to connect business user of every kind. So you see on the north part of this slide, that there is the possibility for users to connect either through traditional web-based channels, as well as mobile and conversational UIs. On the other side, what you see on the bottom of the slide is the capability of the platform to connect to different kind of environments. So depending on the kind of process that you are managing with Servicenow, you can connect to platform for IT, for managing infrastructure, for managing customer services, sales, marketing, ERP, and so on. And what Servicenow provides natively on the platform are workflows, and these workflows are spanning different domains. So one of the domains is IT, so everything related to managing IT processes within the organization. Another domain is employees workflow, and this is everything related to the employees, from HR to procurement to legal services and a lot of other processes. And then customer workflows, which are more tied to delivering services to the customer, either B2B or B2C. And then we have the so-called creator workflow that allows to build business application on top of the platform to realize a wide variety of different use cases. So if we dig a little bit deeper in this kind of picture, you see how these different workflows are composed, and each one of them is made by a multitude of applications. So for example, in the IT space, you have applications for which we are very famous, like IT service management, IT operations management, business management, asset, everything DevOps or security, IRM, and more recently, processes for telecommunications network. So IT is a very large space, but the same is true for employee services. So you see here, HR, workplace, legal services, safe workplace, and also in the domain of customer workflows, you have very important processes for organizations like CSM, like field service management, more recently connected operations that allows to connect every kind of IoT devices to the platform, as well as FSO, that is the domain of customer services for bank and financial services, and more processes in there. And everything is based on the Now platform that sits as the foundation of all of that. So what we want to describe here is the approach that we are taking with Provide and the ability of Servicenow to integrate with the Provide stack. So basically what we have built over the last few months is a Provide connector. So a Provide connector is basically an application, what we call in Servicenow a scoped application. And this is made by an internal API to the platform and an integration hub Spoke. So a system that allows to connect to Provide in a low-code fashion. So we are basically using Provide as a layer 2 technology in order to allow Servicenow and all the application and workflows that sits into the platform with ledgers. So in the work that we have done so far, we are mostly using Ethereum as the underlying ledger. Especially we are using the public network or the ropes and text network when we don't want to pay for transactions fees, really. But we can also integrate with other environments in the near future. So this open up a wide variety of possibilities and use cases in the Servicenow environment. And what I think is very important to describe is that with that approach, we can enable a new kind of architecture in Servicenow that is a business network architecture. So the way Servicenow operates is providing an instance to each organization. Bigger organization can also have multiple instances in some case, but let's stay with the very basic architecture. So every organization is having its own instances, managing IT processes or managing HR processes. And each organization is going to have an instance of the Provide stack which connect to the ledger. So what we especially like of this architecture is that no data is shared on the blockchain. It's only proof and hashes of proofs that are stored on the underlying blockchain, while all the information is kept confidentially on each individual customer instance and is possibly shared in a peer-to-peer way from a provide stack to the other provide stack. So this is actually the layer 2 level that we are envisioning, and providing is giving this possibility to connect to the blockchain. And Servicenow gives to the users and to the businesses the ability to create low-code application on top of the blockchain and DLT environments. So this is a kind of homogeneous business network where you have all the organization running Servicenow. You often get the question, what is going to happen when an organization doesn't own a Servicenow instance, and can they be part of the business network as well? So this is the domain of heterogeneous network where you can have multiple system of record which interact through the provide stack. And what we see here highlighted in this dotted line is a work group. So what is also very important is the ability of multiple organizations to create a kind of sub-network and talk together in a very secure and confidential way. So this process of building work group within Servicenow environment, I believe, is very powerful, and it allows organizations to build in a dynamic way their own groups and consortia and start exchanging proofs through the provided stack. So this is what is going to allow work group to scale up. So of course you can imagine, and it's often done to integrate Servicenow instance one with another. So you often have one-to-one integrations. For example, when you are managing very traditional processes like incident management, you can have integrations between one organization and another, because, for example, one organization is a system provider for another one, and incident needs to be exchanged between the different organizations. And this is what we could call a one-to-one integration. And often you have more complex setup where one organization can have multiple service providers in such a way that incident can be exchanged between different companies in order to fix the problem for the customer. But what really the work group model allows is to scale these kind of networks to not just 1, 2, or 3 environment, but scale really to 10 or 100 of environments in a very seamless way. So this is everything about scale. And the objective of this kind of architecture is truly to allow each organization to digitize business interaction. So what we see at the moment is that processes are digitized and start to be digitized very well within the walls of the individual organization. But when we come to processes that needs to span multiple organizations, trouble starts in some sense, because each individual organization is running their own process in a digitized way. But when you start integrating with customers, or you start integrating with suppliers or business partners at the south of this diagram, or you need to integrate with auditors or regulators for all different kind of processes, this is where the interactions start to be more analogic. So this is where emails comes into the picture, or even paper form or phone calls and this kind of thing. So we really want to provide each organization the ability to digitize business processes across all the different domains. And this is just an high-level picture, but actually the benefits that we can get from this kind of model are truly 360 degrees, going from process synchronization, data consistency, and also the demonstration of economic value. So for one example is the ability to manage SLAs in a proper way. So SLAs are contract between an organization and their service provider. And like in the procurement process, these SLAs brings economic value, because if the contracts are not respected, there are penalties that needs to be paid, and there may be rewards that need to be given as well for good performances from service providers. So this is where we believe providers came into the picture. And yeah, I mean, this slide represents a little bit from an helicopter view what we think can be the major use cases across all the different workflows. So in the IT space, we have this concept of trusted service provider that we are working on. And in the employee workflow space, we can have many different use cases regarding employee identity, CV verification, and incentive in a more wider term. Customer workflows is all about authenticity of products, digital twins, IoT data ingestion. And in general, in the creator workflow space, where we are bringing the low-code capability to the blockchain environment, we can really go to any kind of use case, like trace and track, like certification issuing and verification, and bring that within the Servicenow platform using the Provide stack as a layer 2. So we are very optimistic about the possibility that we can achieve and reach integrating Servicenow with the Provide stack. We are working actively on that. And I think if you want to try to do that on your own, you just have to go to the developerservicenow.com site. This is the space where you can basically activate your own instance. So as a developer, you can have your own environment. You can use it for the hackathon if you like to go on that route. And you have all the documentation as well about the APIs that Servicenow provides in order to talk with external systems. And you can start from there and build your own low-code application using Servicenow and Provide. We are going to have another session tomorrow with Bank United, which is one of our most innovative customers. And we will show a demonstration of a POC that we have built with them about the incident management process. So if you have time to join this session, that would be great as well. And I think that's it for the presentation of today. And I'm looking forward for tomorrow's presentation with Bank United to showcase a real environment.
Hey guys, your share.
Okay, York, can you hear me? Hey, York, you're good to go when you're ready.
All right, you just want me to start sharing and go ahead?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then in 10 minutes, you're going to come back? In 10 minutes, you're going to come back and do a Q&A, I think is what we talked about. Okay, yes, I'm going to start. I think we talked about some Q&A afterwards, after 10 minutes. Is that still the case? Okay, all right, fine. I'll present. All right, so I'm going to do a quick presentation here from a number of assets. My name is York Rhodes. I co-founded blockchain at Microsoft in 2015. Let me turn on my camera. Very excited to be here, as always, talking to friends and fam in the community. I'm just going to share a couple of quick thoughts, and then I think Kyle was going to be here to do some Q&A, but if he's not, happy to wrap up at that point. So let me share my screen first here. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been down the rabbit hole since early 2015, actually returned to Microsoft in the end of 2014, and then sort of fell down the rabbit hole over the next 6+ months after that. And in the middle of 2015, recognized that there was a tremendous opportunity with blockchain technology, particularly in its most advanced form, which we're seeing today, obviously, with the crypto space and Ethereum, and other layer ones and layer twos that are trying to play catch up. So very exciting opportunity, obviously, and I think most of you probably recognize that, given that you've opted into this event. I come from very much of a digital native perspective, although I didn't grow up with technology in the way that my children did. I started in hardcore with computer technology in college, but before that was a long time what you might call a tinkerer with different types of technologies. And so currently I actually also teach at NYU, where I stay in touch with my master's students on all things digital and e-commerce. as well as sprinkle in a bunch of my entrepreneurship teachings around what it's like to do startups inside of a large enterprise. My self-attested professional history is on LinkedIn. I use those words very specifically. And my social is on York Roads, and I'm very excited to see what Twitter's doing in the NFT space. I think that's a phenomenal advancement. So I'm currently at Microsoft. I've been stewarding the company now 6 years in on our blockchain journey. We started our blockchain journey very much focused on enterprise blockchain because, if you go back to 2015, this whole space was so new to enterprises that it was not even a thought that we would ever do something like publish NFTs as assets. And obviously, 2021, there's been major shift in the market associated with awareness that there's really interesting technology here, not just on the NFT space, but generally as crypto and digital assets. And then also, we've seen worldwide interest in central bank digital currencies, cross-border payments, banking the unbanked, and some amazing examples, obviously, with things like Axie Infinity, who unintentionally banked 24% of their users who are unbanked. So there's some really interesting things going on in the gaming space, as you're all, I'm sure, aware. Just very quickly, I wanted to share a couple things. There's been massive waves of disruption happening throughout history. If you look at the computer era waves of disruption, these are the ways that I would articulate those waves. Personal computer, versus mainframe. Client-server database versus, big centralized database systems. Email moving from voicemail, and that literally only happened in the 90s, right? And so that's kind of, relatively new on the innovation wave scene. Obviously, the internet became the internet for consumers after about 1995, generally, when it sort of crossed the chasm and started to gain the same type of interest that we see today. Mobile and wireless has been around for a while, but like mobile wireless with smartphones really only started in early 2000s. Along that journey, we also had cloud computing, AWS, Microsoft, Google, in the cloud space, and a lot of shifts in terms of how we buy software as well, and how we buy services, like how do we rent a room in a house, right, versus a hotel, Bitcoin, obviously, et cetera, coming out in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. Fast forward to where we are today, beyond 2015, and 2020 sort of heralded in a massive change in how we think about technology. Making digital native first experiences much more important. Basically, the world had to follow the lead of startups that have been basically remote first for the last 10 years probably. So finally, the world is waking up that hey, we have to actually figure out how to work in a hybrid and/or remote capacity. That will not change. That will continue forward for sure. I think of startups that have been, we're seeing major corporations start to embrace and realize that we've been effective working remotely for the last year and a half, and it's pretty hard to change that argument that says now I need you to come back in the office. Basically employees will vote with their feet and say, well, I've been quite effective at this out of the office. Why do I need to be in it? I've been effective. So it's something to think about in terms of another major disruption that's happening. And certain companies like Zoom and Microsoft and Teams and Slack and other companies that support this digital native presence have been the beneficiaries of that. If we look at what's going on in 2021, it's the recognition that the internet now can consist of digital consumers who hold digital value and digital inventory, right? And that's basically the advent of crypto, DeFi, and NFTs. Now, not everybody actually talks about it in the way that we do in the blockchain space. The conversation has emerged and effectively crossed the chasm. And so I actually wrote a blog about this specific point, which I want to share a couple details from as well. There's some great examples of learning resources for folks who are thinking about these types of disruption waves, particularly around crypto. And just sort of how we've gotten to where we are. I can share those links as well. And I think I'm going to take one step back here and show you some of the work that I've been doing in my day job, and then also talk a little bit about this disruption that's definitely represented by the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and the Axes of the world. This data point, before I go, this 1.5 million DAUs, that's a daily active user stat. It's a type of stat that is used by any internet startup looking at what's the activity of users on their platform. And so Axie Infinity getting to that point in such a short period of time is just a massive success. And clearly it's the economics of the platform among many other things. And so this is waking people up, right? So let me quickly go to, before I jump there, this is actually our first major announcement in the blockchain space where we were working closely with Consensus. Actually, Joe Lubin, oddly enough, slept through this photo op. But Andrew Kries was there representing Consensus. And clearly Vitalik, who you recognize, and the gentleman next to me is actually Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, still the CEO of Microsoft, and was relatively new CEO at the time. So this was our Visual Studio work, really the beginning of our journey, only a couple months after we started the work. So I'm not going to go too much more into that. Let me sort of bring you to the present by jumping into some of the work that I'm currently doing. So I sit actually today in the cloud hardware supply chain. I started working on this project about 3.5 years ago. So that's typical corporate years in terms of how you get initiatives going. Lots of internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, funding cycles to get it lined up. But we've had a phenomenal year since I joined this team full-time last July. We actually achieved essentially a Gartner success. Gartner has a supply chain of the year award, and they have it in multiple categories. We won a category for innovation with our blockchain work, and then we were also voted into the supply chain breakthrough of the year. So if you think about sort of corporate stalwarts or references, while we may not think this in the startup space or the blockchain space in particular, corporations look to companies like Gartner to say, like, what's real, what's going on. And so actually getting this recognition with Gartner is a phenomenal success for any startup journey, and a phenomenal signal to many others who are not steeped in a particular technical approach that, hey, there's actually something here. And so there's a couple of blogs that you can find that I've written. This was the second one specifically about this project. This one had to be signed off by Gartner because we're using their name and quotes from them as well. There's a lot of good material about this, but these were basically the awards. There were 4 categories with some other brands that won these other categories, and then an elevation into the Supply Chain Breakthrough of the Year award. Great success on any journey, and this early in my journey on this project, as well as I think for blockchain to have this recognition from Gartner is a remarkable thing. And honestly, I didn't expect that we would be anywhere near this, the ability to achieve this. It wasn't even on my radar. It just so happened that last fall I had an opportunity to put in an application, a pretty extensive application, and I worked with our team to actually do that application. So one of the things that we have actually discovered through our work is that it's very challenging actually to do a multi-party system like this, where you have a lot of complicated internal enterprise systems and a lot of suppliers that you don't have direct relationships with, but where you still want traceability and visibility. And this is a classic problem when you're looking at materials traceability, raw materials traceability, trying to avoid or show transparency that you're avoiding conflict minerals. That means you need to have guarantees from suppliers that are well up the supply chain. Lots of different ways to achieve this. We have been focused on this using Quorum and the privacy capability within Quorum, Tessera, to support the data requirements of this system. If we had started at a different point in time, we might have chose to go the baseline path, but baseline was not nearly mature enough when we started this. And what happens is, like any approach, you get locked into effectively an approach that's been authorized through security reviews by all the parties that are participating. So that's kind of where we are. We're continuing to iterate on this and having pretty good success and great recognition. So we're continuing that work forward. There's another post on this also with a little bit more detail from an architecture perspective that you can also find. But let me move on from that. That's a major project at Microsoft. There's another major blockchain project using Quorum as well at Microsoft called the Xbox Royalties Project, which also has a lot of public reference material about it. Two quick things I wanted to highlight. One, we do a major hackathon every year at Microsoft internally. The hackathon typically has a very large number of participants. Okay, reload. There we go. Come on. And I think we have 18,000 internal participants this year, which hopefully this page will refresh. And then there's many different projects. So it's a pretty interesting 3-day hackathon internally that people get essentially time off from work to participate in, and a lot of interesting things going on. So we're doing one this year that is essentially following the model of one of my colleagues, some work that he did on something called expansion punks. Expansion punks is basically taking the concept of CryptoPunks and balancing the diversity bias in CryptoPunks. He was inspired by his daughters who were looking for punks that were more evocative of the type of thing that they would be interested in as young girls. So he basically remodeled a set of traits so that he could actually effectively come up with a model that has a better balance from a diversity perspective. It's a pretty interesting example. So we're actually using some of the work that he did and this Explorer as well to just take a look at how will we do other types of NFT collections and how do you go create those traits. He's done a phenomenal job as well documenting this, and from a documentation perspective, that's also linked on the same site. So great project, well documented. We're leveraging that in our hackathon work, which happens in about 2 weeks. That has not reloaded. Okay, so on the NFTs and crossing the chasm moment, which I've been speaking about actually for a while, I wrote a blog and published it earlier this week that really just talks about, why are NFTs getting the play that they're getting, and what does that actually mean from an underlying protocol perspective, and how do we think about the value proposition of crossing the chasm, and what might be the concerns of various folks who are protocol engineers and steeped in the space, because what happens is when you get to someone seeing the value proposition of an NFT without really understanding the underlying technology, they may actually never be using a solution that is true to what is the definition of an NFT. And that's a major problem in any crossing the chasm moment. So this is not new for blockchain and not new for NFTs. So I just put together a little note about, sort of going through what's going on in the space. And this is, not just focused on an audience of people in the blockchain space trying to understand what does it mean to cross the chasm, but also helping brands as well understand what's going on here and why is this interesting. So it's just a short piece on that, and also helps for anyone who doesn't know what those terms mean to just define very clearly when someone says there's a crossing the chasm moment or a tipping point, what's the definition of those terms. So that was about all, I think, the time that was allocated. So I will open it up and see if there's any questions from the audience. If not, then we can wrap it up. All right, I will. I don't think Kyle is here to do Q&A, so I'm going to wrap it up. It's great speaking with everyone, and
recording stopped.
Chat soon.
Recording in progress.
Test, test, test. Test, test, test.
main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve onto the main stage, Eve onto the main stage. Eve
Test. Okay. Everyone come to the front for the most amazing interview ever with Joe Lubin. Test. I'm the moderator. I'm okay. I'm Rachel. Everyone come to the front for the most amazing interview ever with Joe Lubin. Test. I'm the moderator. I'm okay. I'm Rachel. Everyone come to the front for the most amazing interview ever with Joe Lubin. Test. I'm the moderator. I'm okay. Rachel. Everyone come to the
the banking system tends to draw all of its value from horizontal capital, horizontal client bases, but then they concentrate the control, the power, the value extraction vertically. Political systems do roughly the same thing. And we're moving into a period where that's all being improved. So we're moving into a period where democracy and horizontality is being brought to the governance systems on the planet, the trust foundation of the planet, the financial infrastructure of the planet, so that yes, they will continue to draw their capital, whether it's political capital or monetary capital, broadly, horizontally from the people. But in this new age of community or this age of horizontality, they will, essentially governance will be democratic and owned by the people, and value creation and value capture will be owned much more broadly. I guess let me leave it there.
Yeah, definitely. So can you just explain how
bridges to decentralized finance. So it may bridge to decentralized finance, or the current banking system may just continue to. Are you able to turn down the microphone so it doesn't feedback to me? Because I'm hearing myself. Thank you. So it may just continue to service its current customers, its current cohorts. We may, as I indicated before, similar to how the web technologies democratized access to information, publishing, e-commerce, etc. We are seeing the trust foundation, the governance layer of the planet, the financial infrastructure of the planet being democratized, being built out in the open by technologists and entrepreneurs. And so there really is a parallel construction going on here. We have a new trust foundation, which enables a new financial infrastructure, and both of those layers enable everything else to be reconstructed. That's all happening while we still all have to live, and many people in the traditional economy need to continue to operate that way for quite a while. There are older cohorts who are never going to participate in decentralized finance, and they're going to need financial institutions to service their needs for as long as is economically viable. But we're seeing these financial institutions pretty rapidly, and investment funds and consumers realize that, hey, we're at the end of this 80-year debt super cycle, and some things are going off the rails. There's too much debt in the system. Too much of our budgets are going to service debt. We're having to print money too quickly, and capital is depreciating. Nation state money is depreciating, and it's not yielding very much. And there's this new parallel constructed global economy being built. And we've seen the capital in that economy grow in value exponentially over the last 10 or 11 years. And we're seeing the capital in that ecosystem in great demand. And so it's yielding quite significantly. And so it'll be interesting to see how decentralized finance grows and sucks in value from centralized finance, and whether it gets to a point where centralized finance and the people who own that capital can't move their capital fast enough into the decentralized finance ecosystem, where we have these ideas like digitally sound money and ultrasound money.
right? So while we're
So I think regulation will make sense in various places around the world, and it'll be tremendous for adoption. It's an incredibly powerful new technology, which is going to change everything. And different nation states that labor under different political philosophies are going to have to figure out how this new technology fits in well with their own political philosophy. Certain nation states will use it to facilitate collaboration internally, but may use it as a control mechanism for the population. This technology, I think, it represents one of the purest expressions of free market capitalism at the lower layers, where all the infrastructure is granularly free market and permissionlessly participatory. And even on top of that, you can build more free market systems, or you can build social collectives that obey different rules. And so it really subserves different political philosophies. And I think that's really exciting. Regulation in liberal democracies, I think, is going to go well. I think that rational heads will prevail. The infrastructure bill in the United States made it clear to many of the senators and many of the people who are watching that, hey, something huge is going on here. There's a lot of people and a lot of capital that care and are going to be throwing their weight around if things start to look like innovation is going to be challenged or suppressed. If it starts to look like the United States might chase innovation away. So I don't see that happening. I see clear heads prevailing. I think the rule makers who take the laws and translate them into actionable mechanisms, so rule makers in Treasury and IRS, et cetera, will do things that are reasonable. And it's not reasonable to force people to surveil one another's financial transactions. It's not reasonable to ask people to surveil financial transactions of an automaton, of a smart contract. And it's just a question of education. In the worst of circumstances, if we don't get pretty lightweight regulation with respect to things that look like financial intermediation, maybe interfaces to financial protocols or DeFi protocols, courts can be brought in to help us decide how the technology fits in our society. And in America, software publishing has been considered free speech for a long time, and America likes free speech. So I'm pretty confident the protocols themselves will be seen as software, and some user interfaces to some of the protocols may be subject to some lightweight regulatory rules.
Right. Yeah.
So baseline is just a technology. Technologies aren't compliant. Different uses of technologies might be compliant to certain rule systems or legal systems. Baseline is a technology that enables information to stay in place while other kinds of information is moved, and essentially assures that the information that has stayed in place in their systems of records behind firewalls owned and controlled by different companies or institutions is perfectly safe. And so it's a super clean technology that enables a sort of stepping stone from exactly where organizations are right now, to being able to take advantage of some of the promise of cooperation, trustworthy, guaranteed trust, cooperation, and greater fluidity and communication and interoperation across corporate and other boundaries.
Right, definitely. Obviously, once
Sure. So we believe in the technology, the baseline technology. We believe in the provide UBT. Our baseline team has been working intimately with the other two organizations pretty much since the technology was invented. And we're going to find so many different uses of the technology. There are a bunch that John Wolpert spoke about earlier, and we're just happy to have substrates on which the baseline technology can be built, and good partners to do it with.
right, definitely.
So DeFi is maturing pretty rapidly. Just generic DeFi is maturing pretty rapidly. It's being built out in an open permissionless context, and it is attracting many tens of billions of capital, many tens of billions of liquidity. That's pretty attractive to early adopters, be they consumers or small investment funds, small hedge funds. It's also increasingly attractive to major financial institutions who are salivating about the opportunities. These opportunities are growing exponentially, and so it's really a question of finding stepping stones of helping regulators think through what's going on in the space. And what's going on is just a total re-architecting of how financial services can be provided, and how they can be structured. A lot of regulation is about protecting consumers or other actors from those who custody their assets or serve as intermediaries in some way. And if you can guarantee the compliance, automated compliance, because you've removed the middle people from the equation, and replaced them with automation, with something that's rock solid, then you can get rid of a bunch of regulation. There may be other things that you need to pay attention to, but we're figuring that out. And so one of these stepping stones are projects like Compound or projects like Aave that are providing pretty easy to use, easy to get comfortable with interfaces to our ecosystem, where you can keep just send some money to a bank account, and then these organizations can effectively do what's necessary to expose institutions to the upside of yield and just asset appreciation in our ecosystem.
Right. Being done.
So Baseline isn't leading the sector. Baseline is an incredibly cool and powerful technology, and it picked up steam really early, and it continues to roll on with a lot of steam. There's a lot of serious organizations who are very excited about Baseline. Baseline is a technology in a pantheon of technologies, whether they're siloed blockchains or siloed blockchains with bridges to other blockchains, or siloed blockchains with bridges to Ethereum mainnet, or layer 2 solutions on mainnet, or other layer 1 solutions that are bridging. They're all very important architectural primitives that will constitute the information technology of the emerging economy. These bridging systems are another incredibly important primitive. Baseline is beautiful because it enables organizations to be very comfortable that they can leave everything they care about in place and just add something on that that improves their systems enormously. And Baseline's going to stick around as an important technology for a very long time, as all these different constructs are. It's going to be about piecing together the decentralized web with the appropriate components for your particular use case.
Right. Yep. Kyle, do we have time for another question, or I don't know what the timing? Yeah. Okay. So something that I've been fascinated with, because I've been writing about the space since 2017, and we saw kind of in the beginning this whole thing with private blockchains, and now we're seeing a lot of enterprises using public networks. So can you kind of talk a little bit about why we're seeing that shift and how that's being made possible with, you know, things like zero knowledge proofs?
So I think there has been a shift that's apparent, but it's a false characterization, in my opinion. I think there were a lot of experiments done on, quote, private permissioned networks that were interesting learning experiences. But just like the internet now, I think we're going to have lots of siloed systems, what you refer to as private systems, that accomplish the needs of certain organizations. So they're going to want their departments to be on the same siloed blockchain system, and it won't be appropriate for another company to be accessing that system. You may expose an interface to customers to that siloed system. Like I said before, it's going to be a heterogeneous architecture, the information technology architecture of the next generation economy. And these, just like intranets remain important, these internal systems are going to be very important. We're going to see bridging technology that enables them to connect to other siloed systems, or hub bridges that enable to connect to everything that they need to connect to. So it is the case that private networks are getting more capable, but we're no longer going to be in a monolithic blockchain world as we were in early on and experimented on. We're going to be in a world that's quite sophisticated and modular, and that achieves scalability and usability and security via lots of these different architectures that are linked to one another.
Right. Yeah. So private networks are good, but
private is good for things that should be private.
okay.
I think it's about extracting what's going on in those private networks and being able to, you know, privately leverage that value publicly in the new financial system.
Yeah, I see Paul Brody came on to tell me that I'm totally wrong about private systems. But,
Your comments will be challenged next. Do we have? Are we?
I agree with everything Paul says, by the way.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, to keep going. Should we take questions from the audience? Or Joe, do you have anything that you want to add, maybe that we didn't already cover? Like anything that you're excited about that you want
to? Way too much to start listing them. Have you heard of NFTs? They're pretty cool.
Should we do questions from the audience or?
It's up to Joe.
Yeah, I'm fine. Questions?
Does anyone have questions for Joe? They'd like to ask?
Joe,
Okay.
Joe.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks. Have a good evening. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Hi, it's very nice to be here. Thank you, whoever whistled. That's why I spend the time in the gym. I'm Paul Brody. I'm the global blockchain leader at EY. It's really nice to be here. It's so nice to be in front of actual live people in 3D. Is excellent. It's excellent to meet people in person, to talk to them, and I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm going to talk about a couple things this evening, but first of all, thank you, Rachel. Where'd you go? Rachel just zipped out of here. Rachel is, I have great appreciation for Rachel because so many journalists just reproduce like press releases, and Rachel actually understands what's going on and asks thoughtful questions and has thought about public and private blockchains. And really, I think everybody now is like, oh yeah, public blockchains, definitely. Rachel was the first mainstream journalist or industry analyst who understood this. And so I will always be grateful for your insight there. I also want to thank the folks at Provide for organizing this, for Mr. Walpert, our partners in crime over at Baseline, because that is a huge project. But for those of you who don't know EY, how many are familiar with EY? Lovely professional services firm. We are really the only sort of big global professional services firm that is absolutely committed to public blockchains, that we are absolutely committed to the Ethereum ecosystem, that we invest in this ecosystem, right? We develop code like zero-knowledge proofs, and we give it away as public domain, open source output. And this is... John and I had this conversation at the beginning of the work that we did together, which is what we need to do is one of the reasons why Baseline is fully open source with no strings attached is because we want to make it easy for people to use and adopt. So I'm very proud about that. Really proud about our layer 2 relationship with Polygon and what's the announcement that Polygon made a couple weeks ago with us. They are building a layer 2. It's going to be the first Ethereum layer 2 that is privacy focused. It's a ZK optimistic rollup. It's going to be called Polygon Nightfall, and it's built on the open source technology that EY developed and contributed into the public domain. So I'm really, really proud about that. Privacy is hugely undervalued in our ecosystem, right? People deserve privacy. Enterprises need privacy. If we want to make the blockchains, really the Ethereum ecosystem, the place where enterprises can do business and not on private blockchains, we must have privacy for business logic, for transfers and payments, for all of the things that enterprises need to do. Baseline is a huge step forward to that. Adding additional functionality around privacy is incredibly important to us. Secondly, I'm just really thrilled. This is a perfect time for me to speak. I can't force it or require it, but I do believe that my talks are better with a 2-drink minimum. And so now that you've had dinner and a couple of drinks, if you haven't had a couple of drinks, the bar is open. It's self-service. Just pick a bottle and get a straw. Before I go into my talk, I just want to show you something that I'm really proud of. It's awesome. If you want to know more about what we do and our stuff, you can visit us at blockchain.ey.com. And we actually have a whole bunch of services, and if you go to your dashboard, you can see We've got smart contract testing. You can simulate smart contracts. You can test to see if they really comply with standards. We have a tax calculator. We have a Bitcoin Explorer and Visualizer. How many of you know about the whole Quadriga CX work? The Quadriga, the scandal there. So first of all, I definitely recommend go listen to Exit Scam, which is an excellent podcast. It tells all the story of Quadriga. But we, EY, were brought in by the Canadian government to help sort out the bankruptcy. And our engineering team and a lot of our developers spent a lot of time tracking where the money went or didn't go. And our Bitcoin Explorer and the visualization tool is the outcome of that work. We said we cannot do this by hand. We need to automate it. So it's really fun stuff. We can do supply chain production and so on. But one thing I want to share with you that I just really am proud of, from our system in our web application, you can just go and pick the blockchain you want. Right now, we default onto the Ropsten test network on the Ethereum mainnet, right, or the Ropsten testnet. But you'll notice you just click a button, right? You can just click a button and you can switch over to the Polygon, the Mumbai testnet, right? And over time, we're going to add more and more of these different networks, including BSN and their open permission public blockchain in mainland China. And of course, when you sign up for the main service, you can click on the Ethereum mainnet as well. And this is something I'm really proud of. We announced our Polygon integration. You could do this on day one. And so it wasn't like, hey, this is something we're going to do. This is something we are doing. And we have a really tremendous shared roadmap that we're building out with Polygon that's fully committed to the layer 2 ecosystem in Ethereum, right? And open source and open access and public infrastructure. All right, let me stop with the advertising and let me switch into the content. So I'd like to spend my short time today just talking about how we make blockchain put to work for a better world, right? DeFi is, I think we will look back upon DeFi as kind of the tipping point, what moved blockchain from this interesting thing where, gosh, that seems kind of cool, to it is a real business, it is a big business, right? We are like up to our eyeballs in work around DeFi and financial services. We had a huge milestone last year. We don't disclose revenue, but I can tell you that for the first time ever, we recorded more than $100 million in sales at EY Blockchain. So if we were if we were an independent firm, people would be like, yeah, that's amazing. And of course, inside at EY, people are like, so Paul, are you guys ever going to be like a real business? But one day, I believe we will get some respect inside of a firm the size of EY. But blockchain is going to be tremendously powerful. It's going to transform the world. And I want to hit on a couple of key points. First of all, as Joe was talking about, regulation is coming, and we should be fine with it, right? The reality is that blockchain is going to be better for regulation. The truth is, something like 70% of all the money that went into initial coin offerings was stolen or wasted, mostly stolen. There was a lot of fraud. There's a lot of scams. And by the way, there's just a huge number of insider preferences. If you look at a lot of these DAOs and some of the other protocols, they have very complicated rules. And if you really understand them, they seem fair and reasonable. But the reality is the more complicated the rules are, the more they favor insiders who know how to manage them, right? Now, that doesn't mean that blockchain is all bad. And in fact, I would argue, actually, that blockchain ecosystems have performed extremely well overall, but regulation can actually bring a lot of really positive value to this ecosystem, right? If you think about going onto like a finance website, right, you can have comparables. You can see all these different financial metrics that are the same for every company. You can have standardized data, standardized disclosure. One of the things that is really amazing about regulatory compliance is it levels the playing field for everybody. Right? A rule that exists outside in the financial world is requirements for fair disclosure. It's a simple rule. If you're going to tell somebody something that's meaningful and important about your business, you need to tell everybody at the same time. That's reasonable. That's fair. That will make the system better. And we should look forward to that level of transparency, accountability, and standardization. It will treat everybody better, right? So if you hear lots of people complaining about regulation, you should pause and think about the fact that it will make the blockchain ecosystem even better than it already is, right? Now, regulatory compliance is not cheap. It's not free. right? In fact, it can be frustratingly expensive, but I would like to point out that we should set that in context, right? We have reached the point where we're about a $2 trillion ecosystem. The biggest DAOs can absolutely afford the cost related to regulatory compliance. They are hardly crushing in the context of hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in capital in these systems, right? And the crowdfunding limitations that exist today are perfectly reasonable in terms of getting a start as a business. So I think we should look upon this as a cost of doing business, but a manageable cost of doing business. And I want to set this in context because you'll hear people say, like, they're going to strangle the blockchain industry like they did, you know, the banking industry. Would that be so terrible? The banking industry that is supposedly laboring under an impossible layer of regulation is just 100 times larger than the blockchain industry is today. And I think we could be pretty happy with growing, say, 50 more times, right? We're only a $2 trillion business right now. But if we can get to a level where we have the same level of compliance and the same standards as exist in banking and finance, I believe what's going to happen is every financial asset that's out there, every bond, every stock, most bank deposits, they're going to be wrapped, they're going to be tokenized, and they're going to be deployed into the Ethereum ecosystem. And we're going to go from being a $2 trillion ecosystem to a $200 trillion ecosystem. So we should look forward to that. I think we should embrace that. In fact, we should try to bring that forward, not slow it down. Now, we can make kind of the blockchain ecosystem better. We can also make the whole financial ecosystem better using blockchain technology, right? Our existing, some people call it TradFi, some people call it CFI, right? The existing centralized financial system is highly effective for very specific things. It can do massive scalability, but for relatively simple transactions. Think about credit card systems, right? They can do hundreds of millions of transactions a day, right? You know, you don't buy a song online for $1 and pay $35 in gas, right? You know, these systems are incredibly efficient, and they are not just from a technical standpoint, but also from a carbon footprint standpoint, right? But they don't handle any form of complexity, right? Any form of business logic, right? They're not good at dealing with multiple parties with rules about if this, then that, you know, when you hit $1 million in purchasing, give me a discount, right? Who has the voting rights and things like that. Blockchain is perfect for complexity. Centralized systems are perfect for massive volume and simplicity. Blockchain is perfect for complexity. And we actually need some complexity, right? The DeFi system is able to put a tremendous amount of logic and complexity into the financial system, and it's able to do it with incredible speed, right? If you go to DeFiPulse.com, which is a great place to just look at the list of all those services, there are now 200. There are more than 200, right? So in the space of 18 months, we went from like stable coins as a place to park your money when there's nothing else to do with it, to 200 different financial services that are all largely interoperable, right? That's an incredible level of innovation and a staggering level of sophistication, right? And by the way, along the way, over the last 18 months, we have basically put an end, I believe, we are long past the discussion about whether or not the Ethereum ecosystem can scale. It can, it has, it's done, right? And I was in New York earlier this week. I went to a whole bunch of the major banks and securities firms, and people are always asking me, like, are there other ecosystems? Is Ethereum ever going to scale? And my answer is, we are past that discussion, right? The global financial ecosystem is moving to Ethereum, and Ethereum is massively scalable. And don't ask me about when 2.0 is coming. It doesn't matter, right? If I can put 10 million transactions a day on a single layer 2, and I can basically have an almost unlimited number of layer 2s, I think we're there. I think we are there, and I'm not worried about that anymore. So I'm extremely optimistic about kind of this future path forward that we are headed down. And if you think about, you know, Base Ledger, Polygon, Arbitrum, Scale, there are so many layer 2s that are out there, some of them with very specific purposes. Polygon Nightfall, for example, is going to be a privacy-focused layer 2. You're not going to use it unless you really want privacy for a set of transactions. where do I see things going? So right now, I believe over the next few years, there's going to be 3 big trends that we will see driving the kind of transformation going on in financial services. The first is access. If you're in the traditional financial services world, your bank is going to be offering you Ether, Bitcoin, and very quickly what I'll call a curated selection of DeFi services, right? And I think we will see that already starting by the end of this year. Some of the fintech players have hired and built phenomenal, really phenomenal, like blockchain technology teams. Secondly, tokenization, right? One of the things that all the traditional financial system has is they're sitting on trillions of dollars of existing assets, stocks, bonds, mortgages. They are going to tokenize those assets and deploy them into the DeFi ecosystem so they can borrow against them, so they can securitize them, so they can deliver services against them, right? They're going to put those assets to work at a level that's just not been done before. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to trip over this thing, and then it's going to make some kind of blooper reel later, right? And then finally, what we're going to see, the sort of end stage is what I'll call integration, right? There's this old joke like organizations that oppose each other come to resemble each other. The banks are busy getting into crypto and blockchain, right? All the crypto and blockchain firms are busy getting banking licenses. But the end state is that when you need to move money or put an asset to work, and you're going to give, somebody could give you an email address, they could give you a bank routing number, they could give you an Ethereum address, it doesn't matter, you won't care anymore. You'll just be able to do it. It'll all look the same to you. Everything will be in a sort of single window, fully transparent model. You'll open up your web page and you will see dollars, stocks, crypto assets, NFTs, real estate. You'll see it all in a single window. And at a click of a button, you'll be like, I want to borrow against this. I want to lend that out. I'm going to sell that. I'm going to move that on. And you're not going to know or care how the plumbing works. You're just going to know that the plumbing works. So let me talk a little bit about what is the good of all of this, because I think it is very important right now for us to be thinking about how are we putting this technology to work for a constructive purpose. And my answer is we need to put all this capital that we have to work because we have some big bills to pay. $4.5 trillion to decarbonize the electric grid. $4 trillion to close the educational gaps just in this country, and another $3 trillion in climate mitigation. That's just for the US. We need to spend about $10 trillion over the next decade, right, to improve the quality of life and the life that we live here in this country. My argument is that we should be able to easily find $10 trillion using DeFi. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Velocity is the measure of how busy your money is. If you have $1 and it sits in the bank account for a year and it doesn't do anything, it's not very busy, right? And it turns out that the rate at which we spend our money, that it moves around, that it does things, has been going down and down and down. It took a bit of a nosedive during the pandemic when everybody saved money and held on to it. But honestly, the velocity of money, the rate at which we make it do stuff, has been declining for 50 years. It's at its lowest level today in 50 years. And as a country, we could easily find $10 trillion over the next decade just by putting all of our money to work, right? And that is what I believe is going to be possible, right, with the DeFi ecosystem. And in particular, what we hear over and over again is that investments in climate change mitigation, in education funding, in green energy actually deliver pretty good returns, at least compared to, say, your typical interest-bearing checking account, which is basically zero, right? So, I mean, today, if you can get 6%, 7%, you're like a superhero, unless you're in crypto, in which case you're probably doing a little bit better, right? And by the way, there's a guaranteed market because most of the world's biggest companies have pledged to become carbon neutral by 2030, right? So there's huge demand if you can figure out how to meet it. The problem is we're not investing at a level that implies that we really believe these return on investment numbers. So I believe kind of one or two things are true. Either we're just kidding ourselves, or possibly we just don't know how to capture this ROI. right? We're sitting on a great opportunity. We don't know how to capture it. And my argument, my belief, is that blockchain and DeFi make it possible to capture return on investment in ways that we could not do before. So if you take something like green energy, right? We need to be able to find sites to build it. This is not a simple thing. You want to build a wind farm or a solar farm, you need a site, you need locations. You need to trace how much inputs have you put in this. If you're a company and you've pledged to be carbon neutral, one of the first things you're going to have to figure out is how much carbon are you actually putting out, right? Because carbon that you're putting out has to be offset by carbon that you take out, right? And then you have to have external verification. This is a complicated process to meet these carbon goals, right? If somebody says, hey, I'm going to be carbon neutral by 2030, that means that by 2030, you need to count your carbon output, you need to count your carbon input, and you need to have an independent third party verify that your outputs minus your inputs equals 0. What kind of infrastructure could we use to do all of that? I would say blockchain, right? Blockchain is able to do this in a way that we really have never been able to do in the traditional financial ecosystem before. And so I believe smart contract infrastructure is the way that we put investment capital work and make sure that we're actually getting the market and generating the return for these commitments. Now, I want to just point out a little bit of an interesting historical analogy. Every big industrial transformation, the first kind of coal revolution, the first industrial revolution, all industrial revolutions have required a revolution in information technology, right? And I believe that the next generation of our energy infrastructure, of our manufacturing infrastructure, requires a new generation of technology. And I just, to help kind of seal the deal, I want to help everybody understand a little bit of history. Many people don't realize that the reason the telegraph network exploded in the early days of rail travel was you needed a system to make sure that two trains didn't hit each other while sharing one set of tracks when the train went out of the line of sight. The telegraph network literally grew in England in lockstep with the railway network. You needed telegraphs because if you had a telegraph between two stations, you could have two trains running on the same track at the same time without hitting each other, right? You got double the capital output, at least from that train track. By the way, same thing happened with cargo freight. The very first Hollerith punch card machines went to some big railroads, right? Hollerith punch card machines were the the predecessors of IBM mainframes, right? And the demand came from the necessity to keep track of all those way bills for freight, right? How to collect all that money and turn it into capital spending. The world's first mainframe transaction processing system was built by IBM for the electric utility industry to total up energy utility bills, right? Information technology making industrialization scale, right? So I believe if we want to see a renewable energy revolution, if we want to see a distributed energy revolution, we need to have a distributed computing revolution to go with that. So what will success look like when we get there? My expectation is it will look like a mess, right? The plumbing will work, but it will not be elegant, right? But it will work, and nobody will notice or care. So that is kind of how these things work. If you understand how most things work, you're usually horrified that they work at all. That's going to be true for our DeFi and ESG revolution as well. So I think I'm even 2 minutes over time, so I don't know if I have time for questions or complaints. We have no time for questions or complaints. That's a good relief. Thank you all. I'm not here all week, so this is the limit of my entertainment that you get. Oh, I got one final thing. We are giving away NFTs for all the attendees here. All you have to do is go to the EY banner, which is right behind us, and there's a QR code, and everybody who wants to swing by there, you'll get a proof of attendance protocol token. So take that home. One day it will be worth millions of dollars. This is not investment advice. Lawyers told me to say that. All right, there you are, sir.
Glad you're here, man. Did y'all see the lineup today? This lineup is seriously awesome. We provided the lineup. Hey, tomorrow is going to be good. If you haven't registered your application or your project, you should register it so you can win some cash. We're going to be here. I don't know how late we'll be here tonight, but you can stay here all night. Any of these conference rooms, you can stay hacking. Don't fuck anything up. Other than that, I mean, great first day. I think it's a wrap. Thanks a lot.
Here's the